I'm Corey.
Hi, I'm Tess.
Welcome to A Lovely Place.
We're so glad you've joined us as we invite Jesus into the midst of our lives, learning, and laughter.
We hope this podcast can encourage your heart and make you smile today.
Hi, Corey.
Hi, Tess.
I'm so excited to be here with you in person,
Yes.
recording at your kitchen table where we started so long ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's
2.5 years.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So we are on our 9th book, Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Mm-hmm.
And we are on the 4th law, which is make it satisfying. So far, the first 3 laws talked about how to get started on the habit. And this law talks about how to keep a habit going. So make it satisfying. Which sometimes, like he talks a lot about that, like the cost of your good habits are in the present. The costs of your bad habits are in the future. But the reward for your bad habits are in the present. The reward for your good habits are in the future. So how can we make
Flip-flop that around.
right? How can we make our good habits have an instant reward? So we have to, this requires creativity of how do you make it satisfying. So
Yes. And enjoyable, easy to do, right? Like we're just like building on these concepts.
yes.
And I think this law will be helpful when I start implementing new
The
things.
actual habits.
I feel like I'm stuck in the planning mode, and
Yes.
but it's nicer. Or, I mean, I've heard that before, like rewarding yourself with, like, okay, for the food thing, non-food rewards, like a new pair of pants or a pedicure or a massage or
Yes.
spa things of like rewarding self-care of your body and what your nutrition, what you're eating. Hopefully the salads become enjoyable when you're eating them and you feel good, right? Like that is a reward.
Yes.
Your tummy doesn't hurt because you ate too much sugar. Or I noticed when we went out fast food restaurants, if I drank a pop and the fast food stuff, headache immediately.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm going to take a note of that. Like, this
Yeah.
was not, it was an easy choice, but it wasn't the best choice. And if I just drank water, then I could do that.
Yes.
Hence, there's a big water bottle. Check.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah. So he talks about like the example of like hand soap smelling good. Like it makes it easier for you to have the habit of washing your hands if it smells good or it feels good. Or like toothpaste, that apparently toothpaste sales went up or usage went up so much when they've added cinnamon or mint or different things as a flavor, even though it's not necessary, but to make it more pleasing when
You could
people
just
do it.
charcoal.
Right?
Baking soda or baking powder? No, baking
Soda.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
But so anyway, so it's like you want it to be pleasurable, and then it tells your brain like this is a good idea, you should keep doing this thing. But that is hard, I think. It makes me feel like, well, it's hard if it's a habit. Like, how do I make it satisfying? How do I add things into the mix to make it something that now my body or my brain wants to do that thing instead of is resisting it? Because I like to be lazy sometimes, and bless you, I don't always have the best habits. Bless you again.
Excuse me.
So I found
Your habits aren't perfect, Tess?
no,
What?
not in the least bit.
Okay. Neither are mine.
I found comfort in this chapter because he talks about how our ancestors were like,
I don't know why that
with
made me
their
laugh. Sorry.
with their Paleolithic brains were wired for immediate gratification. It was like for survival. Like that was how they survived. And we are in a completely different environment, a delayed return environment, because you have to sometimes we have to put in the work to get the payoff. And it doesn't really match our brains. So it's normal that I struggle with making good habits stick.
Yeah.
Like that made me feel better. Like I'm
Yeah.
not just a lazy, defective person.
No, you're not. Well, and then the hand soap thing was in, where was it at? Pakistan?
Karachi, yeah, Pakistan.
Yeah. So I just like that because when they were asking the different people in the community, you know, is hand washing good and would it be helpful? They were all saying yes. But
Right.
it wasn't until it was enjoyable that it clicked
Stuck.
and made it like, oh yeah, let's do this. And then it dramatically changed the whole
Community.
motion. So
Yeah.
it doesn't even have to be like this new habit is, I don't know, like I feel like sometimes I'm like, I have to make a new habit. Like I'm like, wait, what? Maybe it is just, it's simple, right? Like it's not complicated. It's
Yes.
fancy soap to wash your hands before you cook your dinner.
Right.
Like, and that changed a whole community. So I'm like, how can I just was encouraged. I guess I was inspired on a bigger picture of just like how impacting another person's life could be as simple as good smelling hand soap.
yeah.
Like it's not complicated to go and love people. And then maybe I wouldn't care so much about what my own problem is. And then I'm serving. So apparently I've just jumped out of the box and maybe whatever. Anyways.
I love it too because it reminds me that like we're not robots.
Amen.
God made us to love things that are pretty
Mm-hmm.
or to love things that smell good or to love things that feel good. Like he made our body to have all of those different senses. So why not use that to our advantage? Put some beauty in our lives, put some good smelling things in our lives, like make things enjoyable
And then
instead
people
of
want to be around us.
instead of just trying to be robots. Like I just
Right.
need to do this thing.
Yeah.
Like make it enjoyable. So I like that.
Yeah.
I like
Me
that God
too.
made us with senses. Even though sometimes my acute sense of hearing really bothers me. It makes things not enjoyable.
And then earlier today, we were like, I think I'm going deaf.
well, hearing
So
what
we're
someone said
contradiction.
wasn't working. I do think I have very sensitive ears, though. Like,
Yeah.
sounds bother me a lot. And someone in my life decided to gift me with a pair of noise canceling headphones.
Mm-hmm.
And I had some quiet time where, I mean, it wasn't, it was
Literally.
like I put them on and I put some music on that was like this really wonderful worship music I've been listening to lately. And I was able to like slow down. I think I didn't realize how distracted I get by what I'm hearing around me. And actually look Rihanna in the eyes and snuggle with her and swing because I wasn't so caught up in like, my children are screaming at each other, or there's this noise happening over there, or there's this thing happening. I was like, I could hone in on what was important. I don't know what that has to do with this, but whatever. It was a good moment.
It's working.
I was
you're
making
not,
it satisfying
Yes.
to spend time with my kids.
Yes, you're not a robot and you need some quiet. That's a good
Yes.
thing. I also need that, like, sometimes picking up Riker from school, I would be like, hey, do you want to listen to any music? Most of the time he would say no. Like, he just needed a quiet car for a minute to just be like, you need a moment. Like, that's a good
Yes.
thing to do because then it's another thing of taking care of yourself, right? Like, that's the
Yes.
whole point of having habits that are good and leading. Like, I think that was the thing when we were in our break, like just what we're working toward it was right there.
Oh, dang it.
I don't know. I'll come back again.
Okay.
Okay.
The thought train derailed. That happens to me sometimes too. Oh my goodness. So one thing that I've been doing that helps me to want to journal more is I have bought gel pens. For some reason, I've realized that I love color on my page. I love the way that they write.
Are they
It's, like,
sparkly, too?
smooth. Yeah, these ones are sparkly. And I'm just like, okay. And now I really like writing and I like checking things off and I like, because it's so pretty. So that's one thing that's helped me, which seems small and silly.
Yeah.
But it makes it satisfying. So then
Yeah.
it's easier to do.
I think the idea that I'm remembering now, I was doing laundry. So I was in my room and I just was like praying. You know how like you can just pray for a minute and do laundry?
Because it's mindless.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was doing that. Like it's a habit. It's been ingrained.
So this is how we can pray more is by
we
doing
do laundry.
making things more mindless so we can pray. There we go.
I like it. But I was just thinking though, like I was trying to map out the day and what I needed to do, and I think I had to work that afternoon. So it's like there was like 4 or 5 hours of time, and I was just remember thinking like, okay, what would the person that I'm wanting to be, what would I want her to do? Or so it kind of helped me reframe things, and it was a little overwhelming all at the same time because I'm like, I'm not that lady yet. Like, so one day I think I actually just laid down and took a nap, and then a different day I
good.
was like, well, what if you just went outside and went on a walk because you want to go on a walk? Like that's a good thing to like take care of me. So I feel like maybe I'm stumbling over my words because I feel like there's this old pattern and now I want this new one, and I don't always know what it is that I'm wanting, but I know it's different than what I've been doing.
Yeah.
So it's like a check in my head, my process or something. So I feel like I'm learning a lot of new things
That's good.
at the same time. So it was like, I guess it goes back to the voting for yourself. Like,
Yeah.
because he talks about that too. Like every action you do is a vote or a ticket toward the person you want to do.
Yes.
So maybe that's what I was also thinking, because somebody was talking to me and they were like, oh, you seem like you have it all together. And I'm like, thank you.
You're like,
And
what the heck are you
what?
thinking?
I don't know. I'm glad you think that. And then I was like, oh, whatever. Anyways, but it just made me think, like, I told her, I said, well, I've been walking with Jesus for almost my whole life. So that helps me have a direction, a plan. He's with me. And then I keep putting myself in situations to keep learning and growing. Like I'm actively, well, we've been a little slower, but reading these books and doing a podcast. And so like we're voting for learning and changing and growing. So,
And connection.
yes. I don't know if any of that made much sense, but
I think it does.
I drew boxes on my paper and then I'm going to put an arrow to the next box of where I want to go. And that just really,
It makes me think of a quote, which I feel like I never quote it right. That Dave Ramsey says about, he's talking specifically about finances, but like if you want to live like no one else, you know, later you have to make decisions like no one else right now.
Yeah.
So like you can't hope to get really good outcomes in the future if you just go along with the flow of what everyone else is doing right now.
yeah.
So that's kind of the same thing. Like
Take
the
a pause.
decisions you make now affect who you're going to be later. Kind of like he talked about, I think, in the last chapter about those what did he call them? Decisive moments. Like that we have these moments in our day, each day that decide what we're going to do for the rest of the day almost, you know, like,
right.
you know, if you like, he talks about it a lot with like going to the gym, but like if you don't actually leave your house, then you're definitely not going to go to the gym.
Right.
You're going to stay home,
Right.
You know? So like some of those moments are more decisive
Yes.
than others. And I think that it's a good thing to remember and to have that time where you're sitting there thinking, okay, what would the person that I want to be do in this situation instead of like what just feels good right now?
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to think of that.
Right. And then and again, I think now it also talks about like the marbles or the paper clips in the one story that the guy was doing 120 phone calls. That is a lot of phone calls in a
That's
day.
exhausting. No,
But he
thank
had
you.
the paper clips and he moved them from one jar to the next jar. So you could visually see how many
Yes.
phone calls he had done. And so then, and James Clear was talking about tracking things. And there's lots of good information in this book. You should read it, friends.
Right?
But it was like tracking. Don't just track everything, because I think I was
Right.
getting hung up on that with my little cute little square dot journal, and then I was in video land on Pinterest of here's how you make it pretty, and
You were
then I'm like
having motion but no action.
exactly. My book looked really. It didn't even look that good actually, but anyways. I like this illustration with them. I'm
my
imagining
gosh.
2 jars, and Stefan always teases me because I'm like, every time we empty a jar, I'm like, ooh, let's take the label off and keep the jar. So he was teasing me last night about the pickle jar. But anyways, I'm going to find some pretty marbles. And whatever I decide to track, maybe it will be the dining room table, as we mentioned last episode.
That's a good idea.
Which night I did that, or
Yeah.
or maybe going on a walk would probably be even
That
more
would be a good
beneficial.
one.
Of just
Yeah.
like,
He says that habit tracking provides visual proof of your hard work, a subtle reminder of how far you've come. And that reminds me of what we were talking about in between recording this episode and the last one. As we were trying to come up with a tie to the Bible, because this book isn't faith-based necessarily, but I think it has a lot of good faith
yeah,
principles
biblical
in it.
principles. Yeah.
But it's like with the Israelites, like one thing that I admire about them and I want to be better about is celebrating, like
Yes.
taking time to celebrate things. And so they have all these feasts that they have,
Yeah.
right? But one of them is the Feast of Shelters, which I think it's kind of funny because God was giving them this feast and telling them, this is what you need to do. You need to go live in temporary shelters. But he's telling them this while they're still living in the desert. They're probably like, what are you talking about? But God knew they were going to eventually live in houses.
And new generations were going to come.
Yes. And so this was like a visceral reminder, like that they would leave their homes and go camp out in temporary shelters for a week to remind themselves of where God had brought them from. Like, so a way to look back at the past and see where you've come. And I feel like that habit tracking is kind of that same thing. Like, and it also reminds me of the Ebenezer stones in the Bible where they, like, when they crossed the Jordan River, they put a pillar of stones so that when their kids would see it, they would remember this is where God helped us cross the river, where the river dried up and we crossed over. But like using something to remind ourselves how far we have come, like it kind of cements like, oh, I made this decision for a reason. There's a reason why I did this, and look at what I've done, or look at what God's done. Like, I think it can apply to either.
Yeah. And it's important to, like you were saying, celebrate the wins and you're celebrating life too. I think that's important to, we're not just robots going through life, right? We're people, we're humans, and we need to have that celebration and what comes before celebration? Like the
hard
work and then celebration, or like there's that flow of it. Like, feasting and fasting, and like there's this give and take,
right?
and
Like
this
ebb and flow.
ebb and that makes me. I don't know. And then so visual reminders and celebrating, because so going back to the garden, the little plants are growing, and it just was kind of like I just had to water them, and they're in the ground, so they're doing that, and I just kept doing that, and then. One day I was like, hey, the one little cucumber plant is almost touching the little twine that we set up so it could climb up.
So exciting.
And I'm like, yay, because I couldn't tell it was growing and then all of a sudden it was like taller. And so I'm like, go little buddy, go, and move the things around. But I liked that again, I guess that was speaking to me of watering, hanging out with Jesus, putting in the work. Then soon, and I think it was actually my counselor, she was like, yeah, and then soon you're going to have so many tomatoes and cucumbers, you don't even know what to do with them.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, I'm putting this boring time in, not that it's boring to water flowers, but it's a new habit.
Right. Well, it's something you don't see the immediate
No.
reward of it. It's not like sticking a dish in the microwave and then in 2 minutes it's ready to eat. It's like it's
I imagined
longer
an
than
empty
that.
plate for a second, just a dish. I was like,
No, I meant like
well,
a
then
dish
you
of
have a hot
food.
plate.
Hot plate. So I love what he says. He says people who are better at delaying gratification have higher SAT scores, lower levels of substance abuse, lower likelihood of obesity, better responses to stress, and superior social skills. He says at some point, success in nearly every field requires you to ignore an immediate reward in favor of a delayed reward. But then he's saying it's possible to train yourself to delay gratification. He said the best way, you have to work against the grain of human nature, or you have to work with the grain of human nature. And he says the best way to do this is to add a little bit of immediate pleasure to the habits that pay off in the long run, and add a little bit of immediate pain to the ones that don't. I think that's good.
It is very good.
And I love, he brings in the point that there is going to be a time when you miss whatever it is. If you have a daily habit that you miss a day of it. But then he talks about himself never miss twice. Like, he said, I might have one day where I don't do my workout, but the next day, I'm going to work as hard as I can to make sure that that trend of missing it doesn't continue.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of, I don't know if he talks about it in here, but the app Duolingo, where you can learn another language. And Daniel always makes fun of me. I'm learning Spanish on there because their avatar or whatever you want to call it, mascot, is like a little owl. And every time if you haven't practiced and it's getting towards the end of the day, it's like, Duo is sad that you haven't practiced, and it tries to do things to get you to do your practice for the day. But it has this thing built in that you get 2 streak freezes is what they're called. So it tells you, I have a 200 and something day streak on there. But it tells you it shows how many days you've practiced. But inevitably you are going to miss. And they've found with scientific research or whatever, research of people's behavior, that if in that day that you miss, if it completely wiped away your whole streak, say you'd been practicing for 40 days and then you miss one, if it wiped it away, you would be so discouraged that you wouldn't keep practicing. But they give you streak freezes. So if you miss a day, it freezes your streak and you can take it back up where you left off the next day if you practice. And they have found that ability to have a little bit of grace, but can consider it your streak is still going, that it helps you to maintain progress. And I'm like, man, that's such a good thing. Because I think my nature would be like, oh, I missed it. I'm starting back at 1. And they're like, no, you can do this. You're doing a good job.
On, keep doing it. And that's there was a weight loss gal. I can't remember her name right now, but she was talking about once she figured out, okay, I messed up at this meal, but I have an opportunity the next meal. I don't have to wait till the next day or the next week to go back voting for go. I'm getting back on the train, man. You're not
it's not a lost cause then at that point.
You're not perfect. We're not trying to be perfect. We're trying to keep practicing.
Right.
Again and again and again. And everything through this book and then other things Riker practicing the piano for 15 minutes a day is more important than cramming in a 2-hour lesson one day. And it's
and that reminds me of what Tara Lee always says on the Bible recap. She's like, if you're behind, if you're not on the day that you hoped that you would be right now, remember that you're probably reading the Bible more than you would be if you weren't, doing this.
Yeah. You can just print it out. That's what I did. I'm going to make it in year 3 sometime.
Right. So that consistency is the key.
Yeah.
But it makes me think what what you said about like if you mess up on that one meal, like the next meal you can start over again. It just makes me think of that verse that talks about his mercies are new every morning. It's like every day we get a new start to walk into those decisive moments and make a different decision than the one we made before, if it wasn't what we wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And we always have that chance.
Well, and then doesn't he talk about having a friend or person with you, or that's in the next advanced tactics?
Yeah, that's later, but an accountability partner.
And then that, like, I've been trying to walk. Well, not trying. I've been planning, but not actioning. But then my friend Joy called me the other day, or she texted, "Hey, do you want to go for a walk?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll go for a walk." Like, I got all excited.
Yeah.
And I was tired. My knees hurt because I was doing other stuff all the day, but she wanted to come and do that. And so I was like, yes. So then I was like, okay, that's a good key of.
And that made it immediately satisfying because you get this connection with a person.
Yeah. And I even walked farther than I thought I could.
Yeah.
So there you go. So then I'm like, I'll have to create a list of lots of friends so then I can have different walking people.
That's a good
then
idea.
I can get as much walking as I need, and then more friends.
My mother-in-law, I remember when she lived in San Diego, she had like 3 different ladies that she walked with. So it was almost like every other, or I think she walked with them a couple times a week.
Yeah.
So it was like almost every day she had one person that would walk with her around the neighborhood. I think that's such a great idea.
Yeah.
Good idea, friend.
Could be. Maybe I could take a walk with Jesus even.
There you go.
Wow. I'm going to write that down, friends.
Yes. Oh, this is good. I also love what he was talking about with measuring, like knowing what to measure. And there was one thing that really stood out to me. He said, but just because you can measure something doesn't mean it's the most important thing. And just because you can't measure something doesn't mean it's not important at all. So he was saying like habit tracking is good, but if your mind is thinking just on like, I need to do this thing that I'm measuring, then you kind of miss the point that,
Right.
The measuring is just to help you see if you're like making progress, but not the most important thing. And that there's non-scale victories too. Like maybe your mood is elevated because you've been walking.
Yeah. And
every
you don't
day
have
or
a headache
whatever.
because you didn't drink a soda with a bunch
Yeah.
of sugar.
Exactly.
That's nice.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I think, do you have your verse about the butterfly that you were talking about?
we went. Tess was preaching 4 sermons when we were looking for this, so now I can't remember which one I was talking about. But we're new creations in Christ. Is that
Yes, a new
Galatians
creation.
5?
We'll find it. We will find
We
it.
get to be new. So that was walking with Jesus, living life with Him.
2 Corinthians, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. That one?
I think let's go with that one.
You're like, that's also a good one.
It is a good one.
The old has gone, the new is come, or is here.
Yeah. And I think that is encouragement also because we're not stuck.
Yeah.
I don't know where my mom found it, but she was like, anytime you can turn around.
It's true.
Anytime. You can turn your attitude around. You can turn your body around. You can turn. We have feet. We get to move.
It's so true.
And it's so encouraging. And then I think being aware of our habits
Yeah.
and aware of the ones we want to create helps us. And then James has this whole book that helps us.
Yep.
Brain science,
Such
all
a
the
good book.
things. It's
Such a good
amazing.
I think it's one of those, we've had a few where I'm like, I want to keep this because I feel like I need to be able to touch up on it, in the future. It's so many good things in it that it's hard to just remember all
Yeah.
of them, like a good thing to.
And lots of good stories. I like all his
Yes.
illustrations and different people, and there's more toward the end of the book
Yeah.
also.
Yep.
So if we didn't talk about everything, friends, there's still nuggets of treasures.
Yep.
Nuggets of treasures.
Nuggets of treasures.
Signing off today.
Right? So our next episode is going to be episode number 70.
Wow, that's a
And-
celebration.
Right? So we're going to do something special for that, and we hope that you guys will tune in. And yeah, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.